Welcome to the full breakdown of Dark Disciple by Christie Golden, the untold story of Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Vos made from unreleased episodes of the Clone Wars. And along the way, we're going to point out all the things that you missed, including a lot of lore information and of course talking about the plot and the characters, including Dooku and Obi-Wan, and what the Jedi Order was like at this point right near the end of the Clone Wars. So if you haven't checked out this book before, this is the perfect piece of content to consume. Obviously, we recommend checking out the book. So if you have also checked out the book, this is a great companion because there's going to be a lot of things in here that I think you may not have picked up on. Just a little side note, we did record this before Tales of the Underworld was even announced, so we do not reference that at all. But if you check that out after this video, then you will get a really great epilogue to this book. And friends, don't forget to comment below with all your thoughts about Asajj Ventress, Quinlan Vos and Dark Disciple. And if you like the video, please like and subscribe because there's way more Star Wars content coming your way, including Clone Wars Conversations for Season 7. If you want to check out all the other stuff as well, check out the details in the description. So friends, thank you as always for tuning in, and I give you the Dark Disciple full breakdown. Hello there to my fellow Force users, welcome to Star Wars Chit-Chat, the show where I take you on a journey through all things Star Wars with a variety of different guests. And I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan, I've interviewed many Star Wars authors, content creators and everything, but more importantly, I'm incredibly passionate about Star Wars. And joining me on this journey is Maff and Dave. Maff has never seen the Clone Wars before, I mean he's getting very close to the end now, but he has seen all of Rebels. Dave has seen all of Clone Wars and Rebels, but can't really remember Clone Wars, so that's great. I've seen it all a couple of times, so we're not going to be spoiling what happens in Season 7 of the Clone Wars, and these guys haven't really seen the Bad Batch either. So that's basically where we are in this. But this is for us going through all of the Clone Wars episodes and trying to talk about how they compare with other Star Wars content and etc. And we are currently on the Clone Wars Legacy project. So there are three basically clumps of media which were not released as episodes of the Clone Wars fully, and we've been tackling those before delving into Season 7. So prior was the Darth Maul Son of Dathomir comic, the unfinished episodes, which is the Crystal Crisis on Utapau, and this week we're on Dark Disciple by Christie Golden. Now, we actually will listen to the audiobook by Marc Thompson, which I'm sure we'll speak about in a bit, but essentially these were meant to be 8 episodes of the Clone Wars, so it's quite a lot. So it was 2 4-part arcs. I think it was meant to be in Season 7 and then Series 8 of the Clone Wars, but we'll be able to talk about all that stuff. We are going to be spoiling the book, so be aware of that. But I need to introduce my co-hosts, and we need to talk about these things together, not me just verbally waterboarding people. So, Dave, let's go to you first, good sir. Just in very brief terms, what were your thoughts of this book, and did you know anything about the book before kind of delving into it? I'd love to know a little bits and pieces about that before really getting into the depths of everything.
Yeah, so I think I've heard you talk about this or reference it on Star Wars Comics in Canon, but apart from that, not really heard anything else about it, didn't know where it was in Clone Wars. Having looked at the novel cover, you can obviously see, it's Vos and it's Ventress in the background there, although it could be someone else. But yeah, I kind of, it's a great title, isn't it? Straight off the bat, even though if you don't know who it's about, it's a pretty good title. And I was thinking about this coming into this discussion, and I think, had we not been on the journey that we've been on to very slowly and methodically go through the Clone Wars and to pick up this book at this time in the context of the journey that we've been on, just made it so much better for me. Now, what I don't know, and if I hopped across to a parallel universe, I might be able to tell myself, but unfortunately I can't do that. But if I'd have just picked this book up randomly, I don't know if I'd have quite enjoyed it as much. Because I remember, Mike, one of the first appearances of Ventress, way back in Season 1, and you were asking me what I thought of the character. And I thought, well, it's just one of the Inquisitors. Don't really care about it. She's just there. And then she got a little bit more interesting, and certainly, by the time when she's trying to kill off Dooku, then she was interested, very much interesting, but still not fully invested in the character, I wouldn't say. But with this book, it sealed the deal. I'm like, what an arc! Oh. Bollocks to it. We didn't actually see this in Clone Wars, but There is actually something to be said for swapping this story into a novel form, because you get to hear so much more of the inner thoughts of people. You get to hear a bit of a description about the environment and everything. So yeah, I had to say, we are recording a week early because I think I maybe broke the seal, and I was just like messaging you guys like, this is bloody brilliant. I'm loving this so much. So yeah, overall thoughts, absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. But the thing I don't know is it because I've experienced it in context of where we are, having gone through all the Clone Wars to get to this point.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I read this out of order. I watched the Clone Wars and Rebels and stuff, and then I delved into some of this other stuff, and I only listened to the audiobook, I think, for Comics in Canon, and it was a few years ago, and I was like, oh, this is the story of Asajj Ventress. I wondered what kind of happened to that. So let's go to you then, Maff. Do you feel similarly to Dave? And also, this was also, Dave, you tried an audiobook before. You tried, I think, Light of the Jedi, High Republic book, which is a heavy lift on audiobooks, I will say. It's a very tough book to read. So many characters, completely new era, everything new, and you're hearing 1,000 different voices said at you. I imagine what it's like listening to an audiobook of Game of Thrones. So this was, aside from that, Dave, sorry to cut you off, Maff, before you even speak, this was the first, aside from that, this was your first proper Star Wars audiobook, wasn't it?
No, I've done Ahsoka. I think wow. I've tried a couple of others as well. I think I tried to start one of the Thrawn books, but again, out of context. And I don't quite know what the secret source is. I think if I feel a real connection to something, I find going into the book a lot easier. You mentioned about Game of Thrones. Now, because I'd watched a bit of the TV show, I think it helped me, certainly with the first three books, I'd say. It follows very similar to the novel, and so it's easier to read / if you're listening to the audiobook. I'm not a massive fan of just jumping into any kind of fantasy book. And that includes sci-fi. So, where they're doing all the world building and context setting, and I'm like, it feels like I have to write down notes for this species or this creature. So I don't know. There's a mental barrier for me of getting into a novel like that. I much prefer like autobiographies or something about something real, or a history book or something like that. So I think I would probably need to warm myself up. If I was to tackle another novel, I'd almost have to, calibrate myself going into it. Because if I just drop in that first chapter, it's usually not enough to get me into that world straight away.
Interesting. So, Maff, 3 separate questions for you that you can answer in any order, which is, well, let's start with this one, actually. Have you heard of this before? And then after that, we'll go into your certain thoughts. And then this was your first Star Wars audiobook, I think, as well. So tell us about your kind of experience, what you knew beforehand, and we'll go from there.
No, never heard of it. I think Dave's kind of nailed it, to be fair. I think because of where we are going into it, what's the word? There's more to it. There's more. I can't think of the word that I want. Although we hadn't seen Ventress for a while, to be fair, and Quinlan was back in season 5 or 4 or 5, I think it was 3. Okay, but it's strange. You've got 2 characters who we haven't really, we've had little snippets of them, but to kind of go, right, we're going to do a book about these 2. It's like, okay, fair enough, right? If I hadn't watched Clone Wars and I picked this up, I'd be like, why do I care? Who are these 2? Like Dave says, because we're going on this journey, it's the perfect time to do it. I know you said this is kind of where it should have been. I think as we get into it with Anakin, I think Anakin feels a little bit out of place at times. I think he feels a bit younger, but that might be just.
I've got a whole section to ask about Anakin. So you can formulate your thoughts a little bit later. There's lots of parallels here between Vos and Anakin. So both of you just in the back of your mind think about Anakin and some other stuff. But sorry, continue, Maff.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was talking with my son this morning, and I was kind of saying, really, who are the worst ones? Are the Jedis as the good guys or not? Because the thing is, they want to be peacekeepers, but it's when it suits them, and they kind of they stand more with the the Alliance side, but the Separatists. There could be an argument there that Dooku has an army of droids, so fair enough, they're getting blown up and killed, but you're not losing life. The Jedi created a clone army. There are lives getting killed all the time. And as I was kind of discussing this with Alex and kind of saying, so, maybe Dooku want... Oh, hang on a minute. No, because to start this book, there's mass genocide.
I was going to say, careful who you're defending. But that's the beauty of the Clone Wars, is that as you'd go deeper into it, much like many wars, is that intentions and actions don't always align. And I think that's quite a big theme of this book, which we will talk about.
That's the thing. It's like what the Jedi Council kind of put forward. It's like, well, okay, this is not the Jedi Council that we know.
Well, when Asajj Ventress is the main morally right person in the entire book, apart from Obi-Wan occasionally, it really does change things. I do want to talk about that in depth, because I think we're all going to have a lot to say about that. But just as a whole, did you enjoy the novel?
I loved it. I mean, I was trying to hold off a little bit because I thought, I can listen to it over like 2 mornings of work. I did a 7-hour listen to it on one of the mornings, which may have actually been a bit of an issue because there were certain chapters that I felt dragged a bit and that. But once I finished it, and I got really excited thinking, oh, great, we're going to talk about this on Monday. And then I realised, no, actually, it's next week. And then Dave Forster came in like knight in shining armour going, can we do this Monday? And it's like, oh, yes, please. Because there's so much you want to kind of say about this. But I think I said off air, it's been a lot harder to do a book review because there's 11 hours.
Yeah.
We're not doing like, normally we do like an hour and a half of episodes. There's a lot. So trying to make notes, trying to do it whilst I'm delivering milk and that, it's kind of like, oh, right, every now and again, just make a little note. But it's just been a blast and that. And I do think listening to the audiobook has helped because I think Marc Thompson's voices, apart from one of them,
amazing.
I think are brilliant.
I think Dooku and his Obi-Wan, as you said, Maff, in the chat, you're like, this genuinely sounds like Matt Lantner.
Even Yoda. It's basically Anakin, isn't it?
I think it's Anakin. Anakin's the one that...
He sounds quite similar to another character as well. When you hear Anakin, he sounds quite Vos-like at points, and you're like, towards the end when they're both talking, I was like, is this Anakin? And then Marc Thompson says, Anakin
I think that will come into when you kind of want to question about... Because there's a certain thing with... We'll get into it later.
Well, I was going to say, because I've got some bullet points. There's a lot to unpack here. So normally we have a bit of a free-for-all in general, apart from vaguely going chronologically. With this, we're going to spoil stuff, friends. So whoever's listening, we're going to spoil the end. So just be aware of that. And talk about what happens after this, maybe. But there's going to be certain kind of points to hit. So there's going to be a bit more structure than the usual ones, just because we will talk here for 6 hours otherwise, and we don't want to do that. So you enjoyed the book, enjoyed the audiobook. I always suggest people listening to Star Wars audiobooks, except the High Republic, I think... At least the first couple of High Republic books you need to physically read because you need to take time with it because they are very... Light of the Jedi is phenomenal, but it's so hard to get into. But once you finish it, it opens the whole world of the High Republic up because you can't, apart from one or two exceptions, you can't read any High Republic content without first reading Light of the Jedi. That's the one thing. Then you can go wherever you want. It's almost like the tutorial level of a game that's open world. It's like you have to do that one. Then you can go around and do what you want. So... I agree with both of you. I think this book's brilliant. It's really cool. It's definitely better this time round, although I think there's a problem with the ending, which we'll get into. I know you guys mentioned Dooku's plot armor, and I think that's a very fair point. But I think that I really enjoy listening to the Star Wars books in audio form because if anyone is unaware while listening, also you can get an Audible free trial. I'm not sponsored by Audible, but you can just do it and get a free Star Wars book. So go do that. But they have all the sound effects, the lightsaber sounds, the blaster sounds. John Williams' music is in it. And the voice actors they get, Marc Thompson does most. Jonathan Davis does quite a few when they're Palpatine related, because he does a really good Palpatine, and then Darth Bane as well. Then you've got January Lavoie, who's a phenomenal voice actress anyway. I think that's Tony's favourite voice actor. She does, and there's a couple of others who've been in like one or two of the books. They're all absolutely fantastic. All of them are really, really good. So it does add to the experience, and especially because we've been, apart from Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir, all of it's been watching something moving. So I think hearing the sounds and everything has kind of added a bit to that. But I want to ask you, so we did touch upon Ventress. So for a little bit, I want to talk about the characters, because the story itself, I'll very, very briefly just go, there was a genocide. The Jedi Council decide to essentially assassinate Dooku, which goes against Jedi code in all kinds of ways. They don't tell Palpatine. They don't tell the Republic. They quietly, the Jedi Council decide to assassinate a political leader, which everyone knows how bad that is in its own way. And especially the Jedi doing it. They basically ask Quinlan Vos, who's great at undercover work and etc., to find Asajj Ventress. Specifically, they tell him to find Asajj Ventress, work with her to take down Dooku. That's the whole plot of the book. And essentially, he meets Ventress. Spoiler, they fall in love. She teaches him dark side stuff. They go on this... the first half of the book's like their journey together. And then the second half of the book is really like... what happened because of the assassination attempt? What is the fallout from that? What happens to people after that assassination attempt? Because we all know Dooku survived. And then it's kind of the reaction of the Jedi, the trust, what is the dark side, what isn't, who is bad in air quotes, who isn't. It does all that kind of stuff. And then the crescendo at the end is, and again, I know it's all over the place, but we're going to have to talk about it, is Asajj Ventress sacrifice herself for Quinlan Vos. That's how the book ends. That's the big thing about this book, which a lot of people really gravitate towards because Asajj's storyline was not complete in the Clone Wars. So that's a real brief overview, friends, but I do want to talk about the characters. Now, we can dot around with the storyline. That's why I want to go through that so we're not worried about people listening. So first of all, I do want to hone in on Asajj Ventress herself. Now, we did talk about that a little bit, and then I've also got notes for Obi-Wan, Vos, Mace Windu, and the Jedi as a whole. Feel free to choose any of those you desire. But I think this book, as Dave said earlier, this book makes Asajj Ventress, it cements her as such a good character. It does feel, when you read this book after finishing the Clone Wars, you do realise her story does feel unfinished. But I think without reading this book, you wouldn't necessarily put that together. You just go, oh, she's a bit like Grievous. She's just a baddie who has to be in fights who's not Dooku. And then when she leaves and becomes the bounty hunter and stuff, you're like, oh, this is how they get her out of the Clone Wars so that why doesn't she pop up in Revenge of the Sith? So when you're watching that, you go, okay, yeah, she's just a baddie. But I think this really challenges your perception. So I want to come to you first, Dave, with Ventress. So how did you feel your perception of her changed in this book, if at all? I know you already touched upon it, but let's get a bit more detail before we go to Maff.
Yeah, so I think they definitely make her more sympathetic. That's how it is. And you said basically they fall in love. To me, this is a love story. The whole thing is like a love story and a bit of a tragedy as well. Just happens to be in the Star Wars universe with some peripheral characters that we kind of know but didn't know too deeply. So I think for that reason, that's why and I'm not the first to say this, but lots of people say, look, forget the Skywalker saga, just explore some of the areas around it. And I think this is a great example of that, where you can do something with these characters. You can have real repercussions as well, some things that do change, and persist in the canon, but still tell a really good story. So I think it's I mean, let's face it, right? It's not Shakespeare. I'm not saying it's by the numbers, but there's not too many twists and turns that you're not going to expect either. Even right from the off, it's like, okay, so suddenly the Jedi are assassins now. Okay. And it's a little bit convenient. Okay, we'll pluck this character from over here that, we can explore and play with. We'll take Ventress. We never really finish her arc, so we can do pretty much whatever we want. So you just kind of get past it and go for it, or go with it. So, yeah, for me, I mentioned at the top, I feel like reading this book to complete Ventress's arc just made me connect with the character so much more. And to keep it coming back to the Game of Thrones, I was a massive Game of Thrones fan, and you've impregnated my brain with with thinking back. So I'm going to apologize if everything I say links back to that. But one of the most interesting characters in there for me was a guy called the Hound, because straight from the first episode you meet him and you think, oh, he's a nasty piece of work, but actually he's the only one who tells the truth throughout. He tells it how it is. He states this is how the world is. You can either play the game or don't play the game. But if you don't play the game, you probably end up dead. And he never deviates from, saying this is how it is. And, I'm in it for myself and so is everyone else. But everyone else pretends that they're not. So I think Ventress is a little bit like that. She's not hiding from what she is. And I think she is probably the best character to come out of this book, and it's intentional, isn't it? She's making that sacrifice right at the end. Spoiler alert. But yeah, no, just it's one of those that's, I think once you've walked through that door, you can't walk back. So if I went back to series 1 now, I think I'll be a lot more interested when Ventress is on the screen than I was before.
100%. So I want to come to you, Maff, because unlike Dave, you never had a prior relationship with Ventress. So you've now essentially finished her story. So how has it impacted you? Have you felt similarly to Dave or different? Or let us know.
I think it's... I'd forgotten that she'd been with the bounty hunters. That kind of slipped my mind until kind of we get into this. Going back now, thinking when you kind of asked us that question, what did you think of Ventress when we went, yeah, she's all right. Now knowing her story, and I feel if I hadn't read this, knowing now what I know, I'd be cheated, because I think this just, you realise how much she's lost and what, she's kind of given up, and she's just, basically being tortured throughout her life. She finally gets back to her family with the Night Sisters, and then they're taken away from her. And going back after reading this, thinking of all these episodes, it's like that big Night Sister act where all the, dead Night Sisters come back, and which then makes me kind of think of, like Dave's already spoiled it, at the end, is she dead? Not really sure. But I just feel that I'm so glad I've read this. And I think it's interesting the fact that you are seeing this mainly through Ventress's eyes, and you are very sympathetic to her, and you kind of see the fact. And at the end of it, she just wants to get away from her. She just wants someone she can trust and feel that she can be with, because she's never had that. And, it doesn't quite go to plan, unfortunately. But even to the very end, she's still, like Dave said with the Hound, to be fair, she has kind of got, at this point, this is how I need to be, and that. And she doesn't really lie, and she's quite honest to the point where I think she's learned from past mistakes, and she's realised that, her time with Dooku and what have you, that she's now a better person and that. But as I say, I feel that especially when we first meet, she's very kind of caged off. She's like, she works alone, which this is why these two work quite well together, because they both work alone and that. But then you do feel that there are points with Quinlan Vos, he's really pushing, but he has to do. But yeah, as I say, would this been a good on the screen? Maybe, but I think I've got more from listening to it.
I agree. I think, because I was reading a bit of information about this, so I did a bit of a deep dive into like Quinlan Vos's Legends history and stuff like that. And again, when we get to the end, I'll talk about related content post Dark Disciple, because I'm sure some of the listeners are going, why are you mentioning this? It's like, guys, ease up. You imaginary people in the future. I was reading it, and what they were saying is when Christie Golden wrote this, and there's that it's a foreword, but it's at the end of the audiobook, is Katie Lucas talking about, she wrote these episodes initially and then kind of handed the mantle to Christie Golden, who then changed it from a script into an actual novel. And what they said is they really liked that they had the freedom to be able to get into the psychology of Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Vos. Now, Vos, I think he's quite a cool character, but I think he's criminally underused. But he's got he's a very big following in Legends, which I'll get into in a little bit. But Ventress is the way she feels about things. Like, you can always tell she's got, I'm going to be honest here. I've always had a bit of a crush on Ventress. She's the kind of woman I always fancy in shows and stuff like that. But I feel like in real life, I wouldn't be able to handle. But I find that in this book, as you guys both kind of said, she's very sympathetic. And even though I know how the book ends, it's like, Dave mentioned about being, it's not Shakespeare, but it's definitely a tragedy. And you go, the whole time, even knowing, I knew what was going to happen. And I was like, when she's begging Vos near the end, can we just go? Can we just go? I was thinking of you guys. I was thinking these guys don't know what's going to happen.
That's heartbreaking.
It's horrible. It's generally, at points I was like listening to it and do the dish, and I was like, all right,
I think I said in Discord that I was like maybe about 5 or 6 chapters from the end, and I said, I don't know where this is going. You can kind of see certain things, and you're kind of thinking, well, they're bad. Can't you see this? But I don't know. And all the way up, it's that thing of how is this going to end? And the thing is, Dave doesn't remember season 7 of Clone Wars anyway. But it's like, does she turn up again? Is she in a further down the line? I don't know. And that's what's good. In fact, you've got 2 characters really who don't have plot armor. That's the issue that I have with the book, and it's not the author's fault.
Yeah.
But having Obi-Wan, Anakin, and to a certain degree, and Dooku and Grievous, they've got plot armor. I mean, it's frustrating. There are several times. There's, I think, 3, maybe 4 times where Dooku should be dead.
100%.
He should have been killed, and it's like, what are you doing?
While you're on Dooku, why don't we jump into him? So why don't you tell us a bit about your thoughts on Dooku in this novel itself? Obviously, we all knew going into this, the plot's going to fail. So how did you feel as him as a character? Do you have any different opinion on Dooku, or was he just...
He's still a smug bastard. and again, he's interesting because he's kind of learning a bit from Palpatine and that, or Sidious, whichever you want to call him. The fact that when things aren't going his way, to pivot and turn it to his advantage. But at the same point, he's so smug in what he's doing. There's a bit at the end when he kind of turns to Ventress, and he kind of says, spoilers here, but that he tells that Quinlan Vos is a Dark Lord now, and they're going to go on. They're going to go kill Palpatine or Sidious, but you won't be here. We'll have dealt you before that. And you're like, fuck, because at this point, she's got pressure on your wound. She's keeping you alive. And that's the point. I'm kind of saying to myself, just take your hand off him, Ventress. Just force choke him. Do something. Kill him off. Why won't you do this? But like we said, it is a love story. The power of love there, that she just believes, I need to do this for Quinlan Vos. He must have a plan. I must believe in him. I must trust him. You're going against everything that's kind of telling you that he's wrong, but you're still kind of following it through. But yeah, I mean, again, hats off to Marc Thompson. The voice of Dooku, every time it came on, it was like, oh, it just sends chills down.
So good.
Yeah, it's just, it's weird because Christopher Lee is there, but I've just got the Clone Wars image of him with the square kind of. And
I the same.
He's very kind of straight back, looking kind of down at you all the time. Whenever he speaks, you just feel like, it's that old teacher kind of, talking down to you all the time. And it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. Or whether they're right or wrong, they will, and that persona that you get from him is amazing. And him and Obi-Wan in this at times, I think because we've done the Clone Wars, or doing the Clone Wars, it adds to it. But the characters that really jump off, apart from the 2 maidens, them 2 really do kind of stand out at times.
They're like the 2 opposite ends of the moral spectrum. I know Palps is in this a bit, and so is Grievous, but they're not really in it much. It's really Dooku's, in air quotes, the ultimate baddie, and then Obi-Wan isn't shown it initially, but by the end, I think he's definitely like the morally good one. And then you've got Vos and Ventress in the middle of them, kind of ping-ponging back and forth. So, Dave, I want to hear your thoughts on Dooku and the morality and anything else connected to there.
I think what I always forget, and you remember for me, Mike, but what is the episode that we watched with Dooku where we saw a little bit more into his reasons for going to the dark side?
That's
Was it
Tales of the Jedi. Yeah, that's
Tales
going to
of
be
the Jedi.
after we finish Revenge of the Sith, we'll do Tales of the Jedi because they really build off Clone Wars. So yeah, that's what. Yeah, there's a couple episodes there that are really good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a big old tanker, changing my opinion a little bit on Christopher Lee's Count Dooku because we've talked about the prequels and that, and coming into Attack of the Clones, and then you see, oh fucking hell, it's the guy who turned up in all the Dracula Hammer horror movies. Like, it's Christopher Lee, in it. Why is he in Star Wars? Oh, that's a bit weird. But they've got all sorts of other weird things as well. Like E.T. was there, and it was just, it was in the pile of, okay, he's there as like this famous old person cameo sort of thing. But the more we've got to know him in Clone Wars and now this, I kind of like him. I mean, he comes across, there's one chapter where he's speaking to his people, and you're like, oh, I'm buying all of this. I am buying what he's selling, even though I know all of the history. And the thing that I like about his character is it is about the politics. A lot of the times he speaks the truth, and even when he speaks the bloody truth, like, there's a Sith Lord is running the Republic.
In Attack of the Clones, he literally tells Obi-Wan directly.
And they're like, oh, you're trying to fool me again. No, I'm literally telling you, it's Palpatine. He's right there. But so they just ignore him. But and again, because the voice acting, I think, is top notch, I thought he played that charismatic leader. And this book, even more than going through the Clone Wars, made me think back to, I'm sure I've seen an old George Lucas interview where he talks a lot about how he used the Vietnam War as a lot of the inspiration going into Star Wars. And it seems a bit weird, doesn't it, to us Gen Xers and millennials and probably Gen Zers as well. It's like, what? The Rebel Alliance is the Viet Cong. That doesn't make sense. And the Empire of the US, but you're an American, right? In this, doesn't seem that, it seems weird. Now, I did, a couple of years ago, I read a book on just the history of Vietnam, not the Vietnam War, that was just part of it, but just the history of Vietnam. And the big tragedy with them really is that the reason that war happened, or the US joined the war, was they thought, oh, well, there's this wave of communism. It was very much, you had the superpowers, and it was this battle of ideologies, the free market versus, the kind of communist, socialist ideals, Marxism and all that. Vietnam just wanted its own national identity. It was a hangover from all the colonialism where the Europeans went around the world saying, this is mine, this is mine. We now run this. Vietnam just wanted their own independence. They wanted, to run themselves. And so it had me thinking back to that book where I'm thinking, well, actually what Dooku's saying there with the separatists, they are the nationalists, they just want their own identity. So I must admit, this was another one in the plus column for Dooku. Now later on, he's being a bit of a dick when he's half dead, but also I kind of feel like it makes him more badass as well. It's like, oh god, this really hurts. Oh, but Ventress, you're a bit of an arsehole, aren't you? He just won't let up. It's like, I know you're keeping me alive, but yeah, you're fucked, aren't you? So yeah, I just loved him. I thought he was great in this book.
It's really good, and it's one of those where he is, at points, he is a bit of a moustache twirling villain, but I think him and Ventress are just two people who really got caught up in a dark power that's beyond them. And they basically were just doing what they could to survive. And when we get to Tales of the Jedi, we do get a little bit more. You get about 40 minutes or so of pretty much just Dooku before the Clone Wars. And it is really interesting. There's some really cool stuff in there that obviously when we get there, we'll talk about it. But as you say, Dave, one of my notes is, God, when Dooku says the Republic are killing clones, we're killing droids. And I think Maff mentioned at the start as well. I was like,
Yeah.
Damn, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
I've read the book before, and I never even thought of that.
Well, that's the thing. That's why I kind of, I mean, all right, yes, there is the genocide of a planet because they wouldn't join. But the thing is, it's the bit of the party when he's kind of getting honoured.
Mm.
And, I mean, the only bit where he's kind of thrown up a bit is where Ventress is so clever and she just comes up and she kind of whispers in his ear. And it's like, oh. But then, he just twists it around. It's like, oh. And he's so sure of himself. But you said it, he's a survivor. And, yes, he understands that, Sidious is kind of his master, but at some point he knows he can easily be replaced. So he's seen something in Vos, and it's like, I could use him. And that, so I can then, and is Dooku bad? Kind of, but at the same point, he's just trying to do what's right. I vaguely remember watching a bit of the Tales, and I think that one of the reasons he left the Jedi is because they wasn't doing enough.
Yeah, basically. We'll get into it when we get into the Tales because it connects to the book Dooku Jedi Lost. But
again, he's trying to make a better planet universe. He's trying to make a better life for everybody to a certain degree. So is he wrong? It depends which side of the coin you're on. Because if we have I can't remember who's Ahsoka's.
Oh, her friend. Yeah, I was about to say the Separatist episodes, and because his aunt gets killed, doesn't she? Oh, I know what you're talking. Yeah, because he goes off with Death Watch, and they try and kind of I'll look up the name of that chap because he's on the tip of my tongue as well. But
that's a great episode because that's throughout Clone Wars to that point you've been told Separatists are bad, Separatists are bad, Separatists. But then we get an episode there where it's like, well, hang on a minute, let's look from their side, and it's like, well, we think that what Dooku is doing is right because he's trying to make it better for all of us. Your Jedi are kind of picking and choosing where they want to kind of come in. Again, the more and more I take on Star Wars, the more and more I actually think the Jedi are just useless.
Well, this is the thing. Lux Bonteri, that's the name of that kid's name. Yeah. But the thing is this is the thing with Acolyte that a lot of people hated. And again, I think we should rewatch at some point, maybe even before Bad Batch. We'll do one episode where I make you two rewatch the Acolyte because I'm standing firm. I think the more content you consume of Star Wars, it can make Acolyte better in a lot of ways. And I think that one of the big issues, there is some writing issues, don't get me wrong. Acolyte is flawed, but a lot of what people didn't like about that is how it portrayed the Jedi. And the thing is that if you consume enough Star Wars content, that is the Jedi. A lot of people's issue with Luke in The Last Jedi was that he allegedly tried to kill Ben while he's sleeping. That is not what happened, to clarify. We'll get into it when we review that film again. But they were like, what, Luke? He would never do that. And it's like, Luke is a human. He is a person. People are flawed. People make mistakes. The whole thing of the original trilogy was the standard good versus bad. But what Lucas specifically was doing with the prequels was trying to show that actually, in real war, there aren't really goodies and baddies. It's all quite morally grey. And the intention of this or the intention of that, it's like, that's kind of the thing that Obi-Wan, I think, encapsulates quite well. So I want to talk about Obi-Wan a little bit, is what he encapsulates as opposed to what Mace encapsulates. Because I think this really, we've discussed Mace on Discord and stuff, but Mace comes off the worst in this book. And I think this really shows what Mace is like in Revenge of the Sith. Let's not forget in Revenge of the Sith, right, that Mace Windu, after being told by Anakin that Palps is a baddie, decides to go and assassinate. Basically, he says, "You come with us, come arresting you." And he's like, "You have no power, you're Jedi. You're like a local police officer trying to arrest the Prime Minister of the UK. You can't really do it." And he's going, "Okay, well, I'll pull up my weapon then." And he's like, that's why he says it's treason then, because it's actually literally treason. Palpatine is actually in the right in Revenge of the Sith at the point where 4 essentially armed guards come into his room that are somewhat associated with the Republic to try and overthrow the leader of the Republic with basically no reasoning. Palpatine, in the eyes of the Republic, hasn't actually done anything wrong. Obviously, behind the scenes, we know all the atrocities, but the Jedi don't know that. So this episode, I think, really shows the desperation of Mace clinging to the ideology of the Jedi, because he's the one pushing for the assassination. He's the one who says about executing Vos at the end. He's the one that says Asajj Ventress shouldn't be trusted. He's the one that probably pushes Anakin to the dark side to a degree as well. So he's the one, actually, that's holding on to the ideals of the Jedi harder than anyone. And he's the one who's genuinely willing to commit political assassinations more than once just to basically make their lives easier. And that's a real big problem. So we've got Obi-Wan and Mace. Go ahead.
Can I ask you a question there?
Yes, please.
Because this is what kind of I was thinking at the end of this. It's like, we'll may get into it more with Revenge of the Sith, but, you know, when Obi-Wan's like, you were meant to bring balance to the Force. And I've always thought, was Anakin meant to be there to be the light side, to kind of get rid of the dark side? The more I thought about it is, no, I don't think that's the way it should be. I think Anakin kind of was right. The fact that throughout Clone Wars, when he gets stuff done, he taps into the dark side. We see Vos do that. And to be fair, Ventress did that, and then she pulled herself back as well.
100%.
So is actually having the balance of the Force, being able to control both the dark side and the light side at the same time, and knowing where to pull from and not to get too much pulled into the dark side, because that's the problem. When you get pulled too much in, then it consumes you.
It's seductive.
But if you can then still pull a little bit back, because for Vos to do what he's meant to do, he has to be able to channel that dark side to be able to kill, because that goes against everything in the Jedi Code, which has been he's been ordered to do this. I mean, Mace is very much kind of trigger happy Western. Yeah, let's go do this.
Well, what you're touching on there, Maff, with the prophecy, there are whole hour-long video essays trying to break down the theory behind the prophecy of like what it means. Is it because, you know, when you watch Rebels, spoiler alert for Rebels with Maul's story arc, but when Maul confronts Obi-Wan on Tatooine and Obi-Wan takes him out, he says, is the boy the chosen one? And Obi-Wan says yes, because Obi-Wan stops believing Anakin's the chosen one and actually believes Luke is the chosen one, because the Jedi mindset is balance to the Force to the Jedi is no Sith. The balance to the Force, what most other people would perceive, or at least the general consensus, is 2 Jedi, 2 Sith kind of thing. You know, that's it. I know there's a lot more Jedi than that. You know, let's not get into that. But I think the idea is it's quite cool with interpretation. I think Lucas didn't figure it out properly, and I think we were all kind of almost praising him for being clever, when I think actually he just didn't really think things through. But it is that kind of balancing act of what actually is balance, because you can't have good without evil. You know what I mean?
Is it that thing where they believe that there's so much evil out there in the universe that the Jedi are the light side, so we have to be the pillars of the community, we have to be the perfect things, and we cannot falter, even though, you know, we can do certain things if it suits us, and that
it's self-righteousness. I think it is.
The thing is, if their plan would be then to basically make everything self-righteous, but then that's not balanced.
But that's why the Separatists exist, because if you think about it, I'll come to you in a sec, Dave, is the whole thing of, because we touched upon it slightly earlier, in Phantom Menace, the reason that Palpatine gets to power over Valorum is because of the corruption of the Republic. So before the Clone Wars, about 10 years before the Clone War starts, everyone is just aware that the whole Republic is completely corrupt. So Palpatine gets to power saying, I'm going to clean up this Republic. And he kind of does for about 10 years. And then when the Clone Wars comes in, he can politically maneuver around everything because he's got it all figured out. But it is that idea of the Republic was corrupt. So when you are confronted with your government that's corrupt, what do? You start a rebellion or an alternate party to try and take over. Well, we live in the UK, so we have got more than 2 parties, but mainly it's the 2 parties, not dissimilar to America, that are usually in power. Now, when you've got a dictatorship and you try and suggest another type of political matters, that then becomes an insurrection and a rebellion, and that causes war. And realistically, that is the Republic. Like, the Republic, it's not a dictatorship because there's the Chancellor who is kind of powering over it, but it is meant to be a democracy. But as we get closer and closer to the Clone Wars, and then in the Clone Wars, it really becomes dictatorship, which is why it's so easy for Palpatine to actually formally make it that. But Dave, I want to ask you, obviously I just said a lot of stuff, so you can address that, or Obi-Wan and Mace, take your pick.
I'll go with the recency bias and the idea that the Republic is almost, to all intents and purposes, a dictatorship itself. It's not working for everyone. And to Maff's point, the whole balance to the Force thing confused me after the prequels as well. It's like, look, Jedi, you are killing it. There's hardly any Sith. You've not seen Sith for ages. Why do you want balance? You seem to be winning it pretty well here. Why are you seeking out this balance thing? So it does seem, I guess if you think of the old yin and yang, it's like, well, equal amounts light and equal amounts dark. That, to me, would be balance. But in terms of the Republic versus the Empire, the totalitarian approach. I mean, I don't know, not to bring us down with real life and stuff, but actually we seem to be living a bit of the prequels right now. And I kind of feel like most things evolve. So we're all familiar with evolution of animals, Darwin's evolution theory and all of that stuff. But I think, businesses evolve, political systems evolve. And if you think about V for Vendetta, which is one of my favorite books, decent movie as well, you have V there, who's a destructive force. He's trying to bring down the government, but he's not providing any solutions. He's not providing any counter arguments. He just wants to smash it up, and then something new. And, you have new people, fresh ideas coming in, will hopefully be better than the last thing. But I coming more to the opinion that you have this push and pull of these different political ideologies, and it's just fiction and facts all coming together a little bit at the minute.
No, I agree completely. It's very interesting, but we'll loop it back around because I think we'll all go down the rabbit hole of morality in this, which is kind of a very big theme of the book. Don't get me wrong, but I want to talk about the characters a little bit more. So now, so Obi-Wan and Mace Windu, I think, aside from Vos, they're the only ones we haven't really spoken about. So Obi-Wan for you in this, Dave, or Mace, or both. How did you feel about those two characters?
I would say with Mace, he's the easier one, so I'll talk about him. Because I feel like, well, actually, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say what I did like was the acknowledgement from Obi-Wan when he's trying to prep Vos, about meeting Ventress. He's like, well, you can be a little bit flirty, can't you? She likes a bit of flirting. And I'm like, oh, you cheeky little scamp.
That's my favourite bit. That's my favourite bit. I love that. Because I've said Sassy Obi-Wan and they flirt a bit when they fight, and then he literally confirms it. I love it.
And again, it's in keeping with... I can quite easily detach, and I know it's all one kind of canon, but Clone Wars Obi-Wan is different to, Ewan McGregor Obi-Wan, and I can completely go with that. This is very much the Clone Wars Obi-Wan. But I think I messaged you guys, and I was like, they've kind of got Mace down here because he was, you very much feel, apart from Anakin, you very much feel at the end of the war, and you know what? It's easy to cling to your morals and get on the moral high ground when things are easy. When things are hard, that's when you really see who people are. And Mace is completely uncompromising. And, no one really calls out the fact that, they're doing this very Sith-like nefarious thing, and the ends justify the means for Mace. And I think the only thing I'd say is he was the only one who called out the fact that Vos was having everyone on. And he wasn't actually just completely absolved himself from the dark side. So I was like,
I think they were the only two.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ventress kind of felt it, didn't she? She knew, but she had no credibility with the council because the council was up its own backside. But Mace was the only one on the council, let's say, that was like, hang about. Did you check, when they went into the bombs and it wasn't the most conclusive evidence ever. You can imagine in war, does it fire? Well, it's a gun. Yeah, let's use it. Or if it's a bomb, we can still use it. It doesn't matter what logo it's got on it. So yeah, that is the only credit I'd give Mace, but it's very much, I'm still in the attitude. I love Samuel L. Jackson, but Mace Windu, you're a dick.
He's one of the greatest swordsmen ever, but he is a massive dick. Go ahead, Matt.
Before you say about Obi-Wan, I think with Mace, you do get the feelings at the end of the one. He's like, I just want it over. I've had enough. We've had years of fighting, and we've tried everything else. And as far as they're concerned, Dooku's the big bad. We've tried everything, and it's not working. So, and Mace is, I wonder if Mace is kind of one of those who can channel both dark and light.
Oh, he is 100%. He does that in his lightsaber stance.
Again, I said before, the purple lightsaber is red and blue. And I think he's just got to the point. It's like there is only one more option, and I'm just gonna have to go forward and say, look, this is what we have to do. Because everything else we're doing, we're spending millions and billions and whatever on this war. People are dying, and if we can just take that one person out, maybe it could make a change. So be it. And even to the point later on in the book, is like, just execute them all. Just it doesn't matter now. There's basically 3 lives for everybody else. Just execute them. But unfortunately, you've got Obi-Wan, the true knight in shining armor. It's like, no, we can't do that. But nothing else is working.
Yeah.
So Mace is still a dick, But at the same point, you can sympathise and think, well, yeah, but if you've gone through all these years of fighting, seeing people getting killed, and even getting told, look, this person's bad, then you're going to get to the point where you're getting jarred, and you kind of think how he acts to certain people. But again, it like we've said, what we like about Dooku, we like that kind of smugness and self-belief in himself. Mace is kind of that as well. It's like well, that's the way it has to be. If you have to kill him, we have to kill him.
I think the problem is, though, if it was the Republic versus the Empire only, you could say, yeah, well, an assassination is fair game. Assassinate the right political leaders. You run the risk you could create a martyr and create people that are worse that come after, but generally you knock out the head and then it puts you in a better political position. But if you're the moral high ground, that's the difference. So I think Dooku can be his charming self and he can put all his points Mace isn't willing to listen to. Well, why are the Separatists? It's not just Dooku. All these planets are aligning with the Separatists. Why is that? Mace is just utterly uncompromising, but still think his farts don't stink.
Well, that's the thing. I think the issue shows the Jedi, and one of the reasons I think why the Empire worked after Order 66 and why so many people didn't question it is because people were getting sick of the Jedi. Because you see when certain civilians interact with Jedi, even Jedi we like, the Jedi are very dicky because they're like, well, I've got magic and a light sword and you basically can't kill me. I'm borderline immortal. It's like, you're not really, but it's because you're just so... It's like trying to beat Captain America in a fight. You're just not going to do it. You just can't. Go ahead.
Can I just say the clue was right there, right in the Phantom Menace, when Qui-Gon and young Ewan McGregor with his little Padawan pigtails, you're saying the negotiations were very short. They were having this little bit of banter about what fucking bullies they were.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like pulling the lightsaber out and like threatening them. And also, the Jedi mind trick is something that's been talked about in the canon a bit more recently, and I think in certain... I can't remember what it is, but there's certain bits and pieces of content, I think a lot of books and comics, which have been talking about the morality of a mind trick. Because, something minor is not as bad. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Okay, whatever. But there's other things the Jedi do, which is overtly completely change someone, like forcibly. And I know we've done other examples in the Clone Wars, but there is the thing. Just imagine you're a security guard and you're told, protect this thing. And then a Jedi walks in, mind tricks you, steals the thing, and then someone just checks the security footage and goes, well, you've just done that, you've lost your job. Like, there's a certain point of view book about a stormtrooper who does get that mind trick from Obi-Wan in A New Hope, and he does actually get a demotion. So it's like a weird thing. The Cad Bane bit, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it's a very common thing that we've discussed at length, but it's an interesting part of just how many moral questions there are.
You were talking about Jessica Jones, I can't remember, weren't you, recently, and Purple Man. The Jedi mind trick's basically Purple Man, isn't it? It just make other people do the things that you want them to do.
That you think are good.
That you think are good. Oh, it's only on the weak-willed. Oh, right, okay, that makes it okay then.
Yeah, stupid people are fine to manipulate.
I think the problem was, I will die on the hill that I bloody love A New Hope, but however, there were lots of things in the 70s that seemed to be okay in the 70s, which are morally questionable now. So it was okay to just tell people what to do and bend their will to yours. But with the benefit of hindsight, it's not good.
So I want to get into Vos a little bit. So I'll do a fact dump for you lovely listeners. So most of these characters in Clone Wars, they've got a bit of Legends stuff to do with them, but most of them were quite established before Clone Wars or only got established in the Clone Wars. Quinlan Vos is a unique one. So Quinlan Vos is actually visible in The Phantom Menace. I can't remember if I mentioned it in our conversation about it. I can't remember. But he's basically a background extra. He's got the dreadlocks, the yellow tattoo and stuff, and the dark skin. And Lucas, and basically people saw him as an extra. And then when they were doing the Republic comics, which is around the time sort of around the prequels, they were coming out as the prequels were, and there's a lot of Clone Wars Legends content. And Quinlan Vos really found his life there. There's a very brief reference to essentially he was undercover on when he was in Mos Espa when we see him, and it's only in the background of like when Jar Jar's being a bit of a dick, standard. So when that happened, he basically had this whole storyline in the Republic comics where he essentially loses his memory and then goes down the dark side for a while, trying to figure out what he can do, and kind of gets entangled with like an underworld syndicate. And then it turns out his Padawan, Ayla Secura, the blue-skinned Twi'lek, who pops up very briefly in various bits of the Clone Wars, and we actually see her die in the Order 66 montage in Revenge of the Sith. She's his Padawan in both Legends and in canon. And so he basically goes on a tirade to find her because she got like captured and stuff like that. And he used the dark side quite a lot to get her. And then he has to come back and spend a lot of time readjusting to the normal Jedi life. So obviously these stories here, heavily inspired by those, his kind of Legends introduction, but he had psychometry in Legends. He had a lover in Legends as well, which apparently is vaguely canon because of a trading card.
Can I just ask, sorry,
yeah.
The psychometry?
Yes.
Cal Kestis has that. Does Ahsoka have that?
No.
I thought there was something that Ahsoka...
There are instances where certain Force objects, you can have a psychometric vision in a sense. So Rey, she has one when she touches the Skywalker lightsaber in The Force Awakens. She has that crazy Force vision-y thing that doesn't really make a lot of sense. It's a very cool scene. It looks amazing when she's in Maz Kanata's basement, but it never gets mentioned again. She never shows any psychometry again or anything like that. So I think it's essentially one of those things where occasionally some Jedi might touch a certain object or have a Force vision because of it. Vos's is specifically, he can kind of control it. He has he basically is trained to be able to kind of tune it in, just like Cal Kestis. I think it's a thing where you have a natural affinity to it, and then you can kind of train it up and make it better.
Yoda's. Has that ever been mentioned before what Yoda does?
What, as in, what, psychometry, or?
That he can see into someone's soul and be able to see. Because that, I've never heard that before.
And you'll never hear it again. It's the only time it's mentioned. I think the point of it is meant to be Yoda. I think Yoda comes across really good in this book, actually. I think that he's probably the only reason that Mace can't.
He's pretty big bollocks at the end.
Yeah.
It's like, pardon.
Yeah, he stands up to Mace and really, he actually defends Asajj quite a bit. Obi-Wan is the front runner for defending Asajj, but Yoda does back him up. And I think that with Yoda, what he does is He says it's a force power, and I think it's more so that he is so old and so wise. He can just sense, he can just sense things. You just meet people occasionally, and they just know, don't like that person, or I do like that person, or I trust this person immediately. You just get a vibe. For me, the way I kind of view it is, Yoda's kind of so old and so in tune with the Force, he can just feel little Force ripples a bit more. But again, why do you not sense Vos? So he does near the end. He goes, "Yeah, I said there's definitely he was definitely hiding." You're just like, why didn't you do this weeks ago? Well, I mean, exactly. Why don't you just get Yoda to just test it on everyone?
You've been in the same room as him all this time.
That's it. And there was going to be a Clone Wars arc that was going to loosely handwave that away. But with Vos, so he's in Legends quite a bit. I thought he was in more Clone Wars episodes. He's only in Season 3, Episode 9. The Hunt for Zero episode with him and Obi-Wan's a one-off. I thought it was a 2 or 3-parter in my mind, because I remember Vos having so much more to him, but he's only in one episode, and he is... You said that he didn't have plot armor, because I didn't want to tell you guys this because I didn't want to spoil it. His name is mentioned both in Revenge of the Sith. When Anakin's off doing something, he goes into a room a little bit later and he's like, "Oh, sorry, what did I miss?" And Obi-Wan's like, "Oh, don't worry, Master Vos is just doing something or other." So that's like one tiny line of dialogue, and the name Vos he's just the Vos. It's like Master Vos. So you couldn't have processed that. But in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, when Kenobi finds the path of the people kind of helping out Force sensitives, etc., there's an engraving, and he goes, "Quinlan Vos." So he's alive. I was going to get to that a bit later, but I thought I'd mention it. He's actually alive in theory post this. But I will say this is the last piece of content, apart from like in the 2017 Vader comics. There's a list of Jedi who survived Order 66, written in Arabic, so you won't be able to read it unless you've got the translator, or you're trying to learn it like me. His name's one of them. So it's known in canon, Vos survived Order 66, and that around the time of Kenobi, which is about halfway between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, he at least was about. I think they've got big plans for him, and I'll get to that a little bit later, but they keep teasing him, and I think they're going to do some sort of live action thing. My theory is they're going to do a series on the path or something, and it's going to be something to do with that. But yeah, Vos is basically loads of legend stuff to do with Vos, which is quite interesting. And his character, I found, he's interesting because we don't know much about him. So he's quite a good character where, as Matthew said a couple of times, you don't know his intentions. You don't know, is he actually bad? Is he not? Is Asajj right? Is Asajj just clinging on to emotions like Obi-Wan thinks? Like, what is that? So I want to ask you first, Dave, with Vos, and then we'll start to wrap up a little bit. With Vos, how did you find him as a character? And were you convinced, like, what were you thinking about him in the dark side throughout your journey?
I was, and probably still remain a little bit confused about how much across to the dark side he was, and how much was he playing, how much did he have a plan, how much did he really have this virtuous kind of, oh no, I want to get through, I'm playing this game to kill, this Sith Lord who I know about now. It's fine. I think it is a little bit grey about whether he was just playing everyone or was he really seduced by the dark side. But I find him quite... he looks so distinctive, and fair play to the extra, whoever it was. Because I bet, he probably turned up, put most of his makeup on himself, and he's just like, right, I'm going to stand out in some way. But to me, I always think Billy out of The Predator. I just think, absolute badass. He's in tune with nature, and like he's got all these hunting skills and everything, and didn't quite deliver, because in Predator you're like, oh, fucking Billy's gonna make his stand. He's like, and no, he gets killed almost straight away. But Quinlan Vos is a bit more of a survivor than Billy, but I do tend to think of Billy, that Native American, something a bit more spiritual and a bit more off the beaten path. He's definitely not going to sit well in the Jedi temple. He doesn't fit that mold. So yeah, really unconventional. Yeah, so definitely an interesting character, and I couldn't tell where it was going to go. I just really didn't know, was he going to go fully into the dark side? I will just say briefly, I think one of the things, getting back to Ventress, I think what I really appreciated from, the start of Star Wars, it's been the dark side and the light side of the Force. But the Night Sisters being able to plug in when they need to, but knowing that they can't go too far, that this is a power that you've got to really stand back from as well. So the Sith get completely seduced by it. The Night Sisters being able to control it a bit more, I found that really, really interesting. But yeah, Vos, I would love to see him in live action. And he's too good a character. I think the whole Billy thing, I think probably the first thing I remember is probably the 2017 Darth Vader comics. I think that is probably where I saw him and felt like, okay, this is an interesting character here. And so yeah, I do hope we see more from him.
Well, I think it might have been because he's mentioned in those comics. I don't think he actually appears, but he does appear. I looked up his canon stuff. So, I mean, in Legends, he was in a lot of comics, but which is all on Marvel Unlimited. So you could have caught that or seen pictures of him. But I think that Clone Wars episode, what you're saying about Billy is when he was in the Clone Wars, he was all about tracking, because it was the Hunt for Zero episode where they're trying to find, as you said, the fruity little uncle of Jabba the Hutt. He makes a very big impression there. And he's very, as you say, he's very striking, he's very iconic. I think once you see Quinlan Vos, you can almost not unsee him. Like, even like, as you can see anyone on video when Maff speaks, is that you can see in the back or the background of me, even behind me, that book, you can just see that yellow line just across his nose. That's a different thing about him. And I think that his presence is a lot. And again, when he was in that Clone Wars episode, it was just very iconic. And I think in Star Wars, you get quite a few characters that people just cling to. And with the prequel era, Plo Koon is one of them. Loads of my friends who know very little about Star Wars, they would know Plo Koon, you point him out. Like, you show them a picture, they go, yes, Plo Koon.
I love Plo Koon. Every time he can. Even in this little bits when he talks, I just, again, there's just something about him that...
Yes, I mean, he's iconic because he looks unlike anything else in been a Keldor. But yeah, sorry, Maff, what do you think about Vos?
I mean, Vos, it's like... There is an interesting, because he's like the undercover guy, but it's like, okay, but you've got this like fluorescent yellow stripe.
That is so clear.
Does he like just...
I will say, I looked into this, and he's a Kafar. He's from the planet Kafar, and tattooing when they're very young is a very Kafarian thing. They don't talk about it in this. In Legends, they get a bit more into it, but he was basically part of this vaguely Force-sensitive tribe, and part of their stuff is to tattoo on them. So I think if you saw him, yes, definitely, he sticks out like a sore thumb. But I think if you saw someone with a face tattoo in the Star Wars universe like that, you would just go, oh, he's a dark-skinned person with a yellow tattoo. He's from the planet Kafar. You know what I mean? That's probably it. But sorry.
I think, it's an interesting... Because they do say he's the undercover guy who goes and does these secret missions. So already you kind of think... And they pick him out to do an assassination. So already you think he's kind of morally grey anyway, because he's obviously used to dealing with these, them kind of characters. This could be me. Maybe I've misinterpreted this, but I like the fact that there's the General Enigma.
Admiral Enigma.
Admiral Enigma. I like the fact that I'm still a bit confused. Was he actually there, or was it kind of a setup to, was he always being tortured, or was that kind of, well, they're going to attack us, so we'll set him up again, so we'll put you in prison for them to rescue you. There's a few things in the book that are a little bit like...
ambiguous.
Yeah, the bit when, at the party when Ventress kind of goes up to Dooku and she's like, whispers in his ears, and he's like, right, see you tonight at 12, we'll deal with this. And then he tells Grievous, and Grievous like, yeah, that's sound, I'll be there, I'll back you up, big boy. Vos just locks him in a room.
I would love to hear Grievous say that. Yeah. A sound, mate. I'll see you later, big boy.
The alternate universe where they voiced Grievous with like a proper British actor.
I'd be like Euro trash back in the day.
Doing Darth Vader.
I was thinking Danny Dyer almost. Just Danny Dyer as Grievous.
Yeah. Come on, you slag.
Get in the fucking back. I'll take your lightsabers. Sorry, Maff.
Come on, Kenobi.
That's the thing, though. He's too easily dealt with. I kind of feel that you've locked him in a room. Now, Grievous, you've got 2 or 3. Does he have 2 lightsabers or does he have 4?
He has 4. So he normally, his arms, he's holding 2, and then his arms like split and then become 4 arms, and then he's got 4 lightsabers.
Oh, right.
So it's 2 or 4 depending.
But surely you can get out of a room and that, but he doesn't, he's locked in there and Vos goes off and he's the one that turns up to deal with Dooku there. And again, sorry, it's just got me thinking now, because the Dooku's this big, all-powerful, and it's taking 2 Jedi to take him down at times. Yet there's a band of bounty hunters who also happen to capture Dooku at one point as well. With Boba Fett and his, who is it? There's Boba Fett,
Bosk, Embo.
With the hat.
Yeah, it's a lot of the ones we saw from the Bounty Hunters episode, except I think Dengar's not with them.
Tilly or Tyler?
I can't. She's not a iconic bounty hunter, so I've forgotten her. I just remember Bosk, Embo, and Boba Fett, really.
But I just think that I do like the fact that I'm still at the end of this kind of questioning what is real and what isn't real with him. How much of the dark side, because like we said with the psychometry, the reason that one of the big things in this is to kind of fuel his darkness and his hatred. He's told by Ventress that his master was killed by Dooku, and I don't think we saw that. Did we see that in Clone Wars? No. It turns out that no, it was Ventress that killed his master, but she can't tell him that because obviously that then the hatred would go to him. He finds out later, which again down to the psychometry. But I just like the fact that throughout this, you're kind of questioning how much has he slipped, how much is he on the dark side, how easy is it for him to pull himself back to the light side, and that's a bit when Dave said that you get to the end of the book and you're like, where can this go? Because to be fair, I can see several different paths. I could see him going off on his own. I can see him going off with Ventress. I can see him just turning and destroying everybody at one point. You just don't know.
Well, this is the thing is, I like with Vos. I agree with both of you. I think they're intentionally not giving you too much, because you kind of almost get 2 or 3 versions of his story. You get what it looked like in the surface, then you get his version of events, and then you kind of get what he tells Asajj, and you're like, you don't know. I think that's kind of the point. I think he was kidding himself. Well, the way I interpret it is, he was basically like, he's like someone who drinks a bottle of whiskey every night. But it's like, I'm not an alcoholic. But he started off only drinking a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And then by the end of it, he's like, no, I'm still acting normal. I've been acting how I always am. But actually people around him is like, no, something is a bit different. Your life hasn't fallen apart, but there's an issue here. And I think that it's a weird comparison, I'm sorry, but it's one of those where I'm just like, I think it was like a trickle. I think he was kind of, especially when you go undercover, like how many films or TV series or whatever have we seen where someone goes undercover and they go a bit far? It's usually when people are in gangs and stuff, and it's that kind of moment where you kill an innocent person and you can never undo that. And in that we get to the sleeper. So we will, because we've been chatting for like an hour and a half pretty much, but there are a couple of big plot points that we want to hit. We've kind of talked about Vos. There's the sleeper, which I know you want to talk about, Maff. There's the ending, and then there's also just the Anakin parallels. So we'll go to the sleeper first. Maff, when you tell us what you thought about the sleeper and that kind of jazz.
I mean, it's only mentioned in this book, and there's nothing else about the sleeper from what I can tell. Again, I'm going to be careful when I Google stuff because I don't want spoilers, but the way when Ventress kind of described the sleeper, I kind of had that Cthulhu feel to him.
Oh, yeah, like Lovecraftian. Yeah. Or like the Mythosaur in Mandalorian.
Yeah, actually, that would suit just as well. But because Ventress says, well, one of the sisters kind of described it with tentacles, one said it had claws, one said it had this. Yeah, and it was a case of, don't touch it because it can send you, and because it can send you mad, and I'm thinking that is Cthulhu. That's kind of a whole point of Cthulhu, to say if you ever actually looked in the eyes of Cthulhu, you go insane. And there's this big build up to it, And it's awesome the bit when Boss does go into the water, because it's like you can fight it in the water, but it'd be best to get it on land, because then you're back in your element instead
It's emotional.
of it. And then it comes to a point where the idea is Boss has to do this to kill it, so that he can then, when he does go to assassinate Dooku, he's not put in that point where Obi-Wan kind of is later on, of I can complete the mission, I can kill Dooku. And it's that point where it's like he's got the creature, and it's the last of its kind.
That's the bit that gets me.
And it's like, I can't kill this. This is the last one. And Ventress is like, do it now. And it's like, but I can't. This is going to be the final one. There's going to be no more.
Do it.
And you kind of really feel for him. And then it's that point of he does do it, and you think, oh fuck, right, okay, you really, you are ready for this mission now. But I feel there's so much more, and then to not have anything else about it, I suppose it is a bit like the Mandalorian, the Mythosaur, and that. I mean,
the Mythosaur's quite big in Legends, so it's kind of, that's a homage. I think it's cool having these giant creatures, because I think it frees up Star Wars, because it means if you want to create another being like the Sleeper, you can, but you're not constrained. And that's what I quite like about some of these stories is, here's the thing that never comes up again. And it's like when it's a force-based ability, it pisses me off, because then it doesn't make real sense. Like Rey magically getting force healing at the end of Rise of Skywalker because she allegedly read a book that in. And you're like, she's not the only person in 1,000 years to have actually read a book that's got force healing in. That's insanity. So that annoys me. But when it's just a creature, you're like, I mean, you think about like a kiwi, weird little funny bird. They're only in New Zealand. They're not anywhere else. They're just this really, or like certain random like offshoot species. And so I don't know, Dave, did you have any kind of thoughts on the Sleeper or that whole scene?
No, I was just thinking about those, what you were saying, that you can just introduce your own little creature that is kind of a MacGuffin. It doesn't really have to appear in anything else, but I think the interesting thing about it is that because this is a canon book, then another writer several years from now can just pick up this thing and use it again. So I think it's one of those interesting things about franchises. And the other thing that you were saying about Rey, I think the other sickness with franchises, but I say sickness, we kind of love it because we want to consume more content, but initially, whenever you discover something, you've been on a journey, and then you discover a little thing, and then you discover another little thing. But then once you're so far down the tracks, the people who discover that thing much later, well, you don't want to go through the whole journey that you went through before. So people like Rey just, magically get this force power and mastery over the power instantly. So you kind of feel cheated. But I don't know how you get around that with the franchise, because you don't want to see the whole thing. I tell you what, I do love an 80s montage. So, you should bring those back, goddammit, to show that she hasn't just mastered this power straight away. She has gone through trials and tribulations. It has taken a long time, but we'll put it to some badass fucking Stan Bush music, and away we go. So
or finding like a hidden page or something. I feel like if she had the Jedi texts, and maybe because there's a little bit of content between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. It's about a year between them, and we'll get into when we talk about the sequels. But like, she read the books that Luke barely read. Yoda makes a joke about it in Last Jedi. But I'm like, all you need to do is have one little comic, and she discovers what as a lost Jedi temple on a planet no one's been to in ages, that like stuff had collapsed on it. And then because of some weird cosmic event, you could get into this temple now. And she goes in there and finds a chapter or a new book that no one's found before or something. And all it has is just like, she has to go on one of those seeing stones like Grogu went on in Mandalorian. And if she did that and like had a Yoda force vision-y thing where she talks to weird force priestesses, something just to give it more than, she read a book and figured it out. I'm like, it's got, but no, I totally get that. So we've got two more parts, which is the ending and then Anakin. So Anakin in this is, he's a dick in this, just bluntly. He's really unreasonable. He's quite a petulant child. He's really annoying, and he's so unforgiving with everything. Now, I think, Math, you mentioned about you feel like this takes place, compared to the Crystal Crisis arc, you think this almost takes place after that. Well, originally, they were going to be in the same season. I don't know where in the season they would have gone. I wouldn't have been surprised if Dark Disciple, the first half of this, was before that, and then the second half was maybe after this, because they were going to be in separate seasons. I don't know, because, they curmudgeon things. I want to hear a bit more about that.
A younger... but, I mean, Anakin is... You love and hate him in this. And because it's like the bit at the start when they're like, right, Quinlan, your job is to go assassinate Dooku. I know it's not normally what we normally do, but it's fine. We're going to pair you up with someone. I'll do it. I'll go kill him. All right, Anakin, calm down a little bit. I mean, he's got past. He killed that guy when he was holding Satine.
Oh, yeah.
And that a little bit eager.
Too eager for the killing.
There's several times Anakin's like, yeah, let's just kill stuff. I'll only accidentally, slightly shoot a ship down. There's certain things that he's a little bit kind of loose cannon at times, and that. But I think the thing that you're probably going to mention the most is the whole love story between Ventress and Quinlan Vos.
Yes.
And Anakin is a bit of a hypocrite because he's talking to Padme, and he's like, I just don't get it. These two, they shouldn't be together. And whilst I'm talking to my wife in secret, and how can they have a love, for each other? That can't be real. And like you just listen to that. I just felt the point of Padme's probably looking and going, really?
Well, she does say that, doesn't she? At a point she goes, "What, like us?" And he's like, "No, we're different." And she's
different.
"Are we?"
Why are we different? Be quiet.
Because I'm the main character. I'm the chosen one.
Yeah, it's like, to be fair, Vos is a lot like Anakin. They are very similar. They even, to the point where at times they do sound very similar when he does the voices. Is that intentional? Because that's the thing that threw me. I thought Anakin should have had a slightly different voice.
Yeah.
And I just... But then thinking, was it intentional to have them kind of mirror each other a bit? Especially with this point where, it is a love story. Like, Anakin's like, yeah, but, you shouldn't be doing that. That's not right. Yeah, but we're doing that. That's what you're doing, Anakin. Can't you see that? It's, again, so many of the Jedi are hypocrites at times.
That's what Dooku says. Dooku always says that's one of the reasons he left the Order, because they were just hypocrites.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where, Anakin, it doesn't show him in a great light at times in this, because, he's very trigger happy. He's very quick to kind of go kill things and deal, which, again, this is where it's a bit awkward, because the Crystal Crisis one, there is that bit where he's trying to control himself with the droid, and he's like, fuck it, I'll just back in. Hopefully Obi-Wan, I know Obi-Wan, he won't back his, and that because he's always kind of back up a plan B and trying to, I'll just smash mine up and we'll deal with it afterwards. I'll just shoot down Ventress and hopefully they're fine. But at the same point, Mace is telling us to execute them, so yeah, I just. Anakin doesn't come off really good in this at times because he's very much kind of the loose cannon, but I think it is a parallel with Vos to a certain degree as well. I'd like to see maybe in an Obi-Wan series Vos and Anakin. I mean, no, it won't. I suppose you could have Vos and Vader.
There's a lot of flashback talk going on at the moment with Ahsoka Series 2 and a potential Series 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi. There's talks that maybe the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, they'll have like a Clone Wars flashback episode like Ahsoka had. And if in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show you had a flashback to the Clone Wars, then you could incorporate other Jedi and stuff, which I don't mind that.
Do you think it would spoil it? Because it's been so good not having Force users in it, but him being in Andor? with it being covert, undercover operations?
I don't really know, because where they already, in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, we've got the path established, which is basically kind of the early days of the rebellion, or it's at least one of the early rebellion cells. So I don't think it's far off, but I wouldn't mind it being like him, like barely making a fuss about it. You know what I mean? Like almost like Plagueis was in Acolyte. You know, just one guy is there and he's on screen for a little bit longer than you expect, and then he's gone. And then years later, there's something with him.
It could be badass in Kenobi season 2 and have these two work together.
I would love that.
Because,
I would love that.
Again, you know, you kind of feel that Obi-Wan is so good in so many ways. The fact that he has that brotherly, he matches really well with Anakin.
Yes.
But he does seem to be very much a team player. And he likes that camaraderie. He likes to work with someone. He likes to kind of... And I think if we was to maybe get Vos in season 2 of Kenobi, them two going off on a mission together, and even just a little, snippet of, because this book is obviously before Kenobi.
Yeah, it's before.
So just a little mention back. So if anyone is like watching it, go, oh, what's that? They might go back and
we could just say, do you remember that time you worked for Dooku and he's all those years along behind me or something?
Yeah.
But I want to ask Dave, because this is one of the longest podcasts we've done in a while. Dave, thoughts on Vos and Anakin, and then we'll wrap up to the end.
I think I'm quite forgiving for Anakin not being fully in context with the story, because I'm so focused on Vos and Ventress. And then I would say you've got that inner circle of what is this whole story about? It's about them two, and I'm so invested in them two. But everything else, you've got that kind of secondary layer. You know, you've got Mace, you've got Yoda. I agree, actually. I think Yoda comes off like the wise one, whereas Mace comes off, more like the authoritarian. I think with Anakin, he does feel like the young, brash, trigger-happy Anakin. He doesn't feel like the end of Clone Wars. But the story isn't about him. He's just kind of a player in the story, and he's just kind of there. So I don't really... And the fact that, if he was super trigger happy and quite evil, well, actually that probably does suit him in context. But to me, at least, he does seem like just the more naive Anakin who sees the world a bit simpler and doesn't have the nuance that Obi-Wan can teach him about, well, you can't just go in all guns blazing and whatever. So I think for me, apart from the fact I don't think the voice acting, and that's not to take away, I think the performance was brilliant. The Dooku, the Yoda, I think there's loads of characters who were great. But yeah, Anakin just fell off, but it wasn't enough to take me out of the story.
Well, before we get into our final thoughts and then the potential future of these characters, let's just quickly do very brief plugs. It'll really be, because this won't be coming out for a little while, so I don't know when it'll be. So really just very quick plugs of... Follow me at Genuine Chit-Chat, like, subscribe, comment, all that usual jazz. So at the end, we'll just do a quick ending. Find me on all the social media places. Check out the description as always. Dave, just quick, what podcasts are you involved with? Obviously, people see them, but...
The VHS Strikes Back. We've just done Tough Guys, which is one of those weird movies that I think was massive at the time, but hardly anyone has watched since. So it's one of those latent memories that was shaken out. And then... next week, I cannot wait until this goes out. So it is The Barbarian, starring the Barbarian brothers, two basically massive beefcakes. It's a Canon Films extravaganza, sword and sorcery. Chris was going to love it. So, my co-host there. So, yeah, VHS Strikes Back. We also do Chris and Dave's reality TV cast, where let's skip on past that, and loads of other stuff as well. We've got the X-Men. We're doing the Age of Apocalypse, or the Page of Apocalypse. So that's going back to those '90s comics as well, with Spider-Dan, with Max, and so that's going to be a lot of fun as well.
Amazing, Maff. Anything you can talk about?
If I've done anything, it'll be in the comments. It'll be in the description.
Back to the filmography, Spider-Man and Secret Wars, 20th Century Geek, Comics in Motion. You pop up in all kinds of places. Yeah,
I know there's something coming up with 20th Century Geek, but we're doing Superman.
Yes, he's doing a big retrospective.
Scott's going to do all that, so...
Yeah.
But, again, it depends
which one have you got? I've gone for 3.
I've got Superman Returns.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I've not seen
it. Was all right, actually.
I've not seen them all.
Could have got Justice League.
Yeah, that's
good Max.
Yeah, Max is a good one. He'll do anything, but obviously he really likes the Snyderverse. But yeah, that's all the stuff we're up to, friends. Check out in the description, back to filmography, etc. as well. We're always popping up on those things, but in the description. So continuing on, so we don't lose steam. So we'll do the finale, and then I'll talk a little bit about what potentially comes after this, and then we will wrap up. So with me, I remember loving this book. Don't get me wrong. I remember the ending act being a lot shorter. And I think all the stuff with Asajj and Quinlan just being together and kind of falling in love with each other, I'm a sucker for that. I love that, the first half of the book. Post-assassination attempt, when you've got Vos, who's potentially Admiral, Enigma, and things like that, I found the time jumps were a bit uneven, a bit jarring, because, it's been a few weeks now. Oh, has it? Yeah, and Ventress been drinking in a bar the whole time. Okay, and now it's been another month. Has it? I don't know. Okay, and it was like... that mixed with we don't really know what's going on with certain characters, and then the Jedi Council kind of forget about Vos and stuff, and then there's a bit where Palpatine, near the end, he says to Dooku, and Dooku's like, oh, this is my new assassin, and Palpatine is like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever, well, just remember what happened to the last one. And I'm like, but you know Quinlan Vos, because A, you're Palpatine, so you know all the Jedi, but also, he's been Admiral Enigma for minimum weeks. You've been using him, or Dooku has, as propaganda, which the Jedi are aware of, so therefore the Republic would be aware of, so Palpatine would already know. So Palpatine didn't go, wait, didn't you try this a while ago? Palpatine acted like he'd not seen Vos before, and I found that really weird, and I can't wrap my head around what that interaction was. And I found, for me personally, this is all the novel is like 8, 9 out of 10 for me. But that last, I don't know if it's just because maybe I knew the end, obviously I knew the ending, or because there's so little dramatic tension with Dooku. The whole last hour of the audiobook where they're trying to escape, and then, Vos does kill quite a few of those people, and I'm sure for you guys it's potentially riveting, like, what's going to happen with Vos? But with me, I was like, okay. And then they crash on that planet, and it just felt like they were limping through the forest for ages. Even though I don't think they were for that long, but for me, I was like, the Dooku side, you lost me a bit. And that, for me, hurt the book a little bit. And it's nothing against Christie Golden, because she was working with a pre-written script, that Katie Lucas kind of put together. But I didn't know if you two had that kind of, those thoughts at all. So I'll come to you first, Maff, with your fresh take on this. Like, how did you find the same with the final act? Or do you think it's quite consistent, or?
I think the problem, again, is that plot armor of Duke. If there's a bad, I don't know. The problem is, if you'd just brought in another general, it wouldn't have the same kind of thing. So you have to use Dooku, but that is an issue in itself. The point when they if they describe that Dooku wasn't the one who was the most injured, and that, then, but again, Dooku would have left Ventress behind, so that wouldn't work. He'd have left Vos behind, so again, that won't work. So it's the problem that you get yourself stuck in a corner of not sure where to go with it. And that, like I said, I do feel that if there is, it's like a dark and a light side, and there's something out there. I do feel near the end of the book that there is, like, the light side comes to Ventress and gives her, like, a vision of possibilities.
I like that moment.
Which I really enjoyed that. And then you kind of feel there's that, that moment between them both, and she's like pushes him away and saves him. And I love the fact that later on they kind of said she didn't just save Vos from that, she saved Vos from being pulled to the dark side.
Well, it didn't just save Vos, they saved Quinlan, I think is what Obi-Wan says.
Yeah. And although I did feel that cheap line of when Dooku was like, strike me down, he's like, no, I am a Jedi. And I thought, yeah.
Have you been? What's been going on the last couple of months?
I get the fact that, he's just, Christified your girlfriend there and that, but if anything, that should be more of a reason for it. But that's the problem there with Vos. These last few chapters, you're just not quite sure, is he just still using Ventress? is he actually, does he care for her? Has that gone now? It kind of flipped because at the start, kind of, he's trying to seduce Ventress to a certain degree, and then he kind of falls in love with her. And at the end, it's Ventress who's falling in love with him. And again, you do feel them points when she's pleading, like, let's just go. Let's just run away and go. And I get the fact that he's probably thinking, if we go, we're just going to get chased, so I have to deal with Dooku. But then he's also kind of lying. You know, he does say the reason why they couldn't detect the dark side in him because he was lying to himself. Because he thought, if I take out Dooku and I try to take out Sidious, I am doing the right thing. I've convinced myself that's the right thing to do. I just have to go through these atrocious things of what I'm doing to be able to get there. So in a way, he was, I suppose in his conscience, he was doing the right thing. So he didn't see the dark side there. And that, whereas really it's there eating away at him.
Interesting. What do you think, Dave? Either of the structure of the book or the Vos ending, kind of all the kind of final thoughts there?
I didn't get as much of a lull feeling as it seemed you did at the end. I was still like heartbroken at the end, and it does come back to that pleading of Ventress. You know, come on, just let's get away from all this nonsense with the Republic and the Separatists. Let's just go to somewhere on the outer rim, Tatooine. No one goes there, you know. So that yearning to just get out of it, because I mean, Matthew said there that they'll get chased. Would they? I think the Separatists and the Republic and the Jedi and the Sith, they've got bigger fish to fry. No one's really going to care about if these two Force users just sort of disappear under the radar. They just think, oh,
they weren't looking for a Ventress. You're right there, because no one's been looking for Ventress. They're like, oh, she's a bounty hunter. Yeah. Dooku and the Council have just gone, I don't give a shit.
Yeah,
I think the fact that Vos, he beats Dooku several times. He is, I mean, going through it, I kept forgetting, he is a master. He's not just a Jedi. He's
also
a Jedi
one of the best
master.
duelists in the Order. But sorry, Dave.
No, and you're right, but ultimately, Ventress is just saying it's just me and you versus the world, or me and you versus the galaxy far, far away. Whereas Vos has that pull to that mission, that you know, the greater good and all of that. So it's his pull to that in the end ends up in Ventress's demise. So I guess when I was seeing out the last sort of hour, I was going through the motions a little bit. I still had the emotional weight of what had happened before. I wasn't really, you know, invested in that last little bit, if you like. Now, if you're in the Clone Wars, you're setting up the next few episodes, aren't you? Whereas for this, I think that would have been a perfect ending. Just, you know, a little bit of a prologue, and that's it. You're done.
Yeah, I enjoy the book. Don't get me wrong, and I think when I first went through it, it did hit me a lot harder. And I think that Ventress in this story, to summarize, she holds up a blackened mirror to the Jedi. I think that what she does here quite a lot, where they says she was bad once, she can never be good again. We need to kill her. We need to do this. We need to now send Vos to murder this guy, even though he's committed atrocities. This one genocide he's done, that's the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think it's a Maff, your point, where it's like, I think everyone's just tired of the war by this point. And I think we see that in quite a lot of the later Star Wars content around the Clone Wars, is the Jedi getting sick of things. Now, I will give you guys final statements, but I do want to ask the question, and feel free to say no. Do you both want any spoilers for potential future content? Now, normally I'd hold it to my chest, but without giving away anything to do with anything that happens in Dark Disciple, if we continue on the trajectory we're on, you guys are going to have to be very careful with Google searching for about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, or I can tell you a little thing. So, which is a bit of a spoiler, but what would you rather I didn't tell you, or?
From my side, I'm pretty sure by the time we get to 1.5 years from now, I'll have forgotten it already. So fire away.
What about you, Matt? Would you rather be in the? It would make your Google searching a lot easier once we finish. It's basically once we finish the Clone Wars. If I tell you this thing, you can Google search whatever the hell you want. If I don't, you will have to not be able to search stuff.
Right. What I suggest is if you're listening to this and you don't want to get spoiled, maybe skip forward, maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
I mean, what is the context of the spoiler? Because this Anakin
guess.
character, I've got a bad feeling about him.
What's going to happen with Obi-Wan? Is he okay?
Yeah.
Well, are you all right? I don't think the spoiler's that massive. It kind of is, but it kind of isn't. But I don't want to spoil anything for you that I don't want to. I can't hint at what the spoiler is. But would you rather not know?
Can I guess?
You are welcome to guess, yeah?
I guess that Ventress isn't dead in some form. The thing is, they do say, like, I know Mother Talzin kind of came back in the Dathomir one and then killed off straight away.
Leaves it open, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I've written this down. I love the fact that when they go back to Dathomir to kind of take her back there and put back into the planet, that Obi-Wan says the darkness is beautiful. And he sees a different side of the dark side. And I like the fact that there is the dark side and the light side, but there's beauty in both of them. And I do, we've said about the Night Sisters coming back now. Fair enough, they were kind of zombie versions, but I just wonder whether maybe Ventress isn't necessarily dead. Maybe.
Well, I will say with that scene, I forgot. There's a bit where when Obi-Wan puts his hand on Ventress's casket, I loved that. That was a really touching moment. I think these episodes really show how human Obi-Wan is, because sometimes he can come across a bit stoic. But do you want me to tell you, Maff? Do you want me to somewhat spoil?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so spoilers to anyone listening. I found this out ages ago. So Ventress does pop up again in a piece of content set after this. There's no explanation. There's one sentence that references, it's something like either I've died before, or I've got another chance, or I've got lives. Do you know what I mean? Something like that. And the heavy insinuation is that when she went into that Force Lake thing and the lights changed, they do leave it kind of open-ended in this. At some point, somehow, Ventress returns. That's the thing you mentioned, Maff, because I wouldn't even mention this, but you mentioned, it was either off air or a while ago, that you saw a meme which said somehow Ventress returned.
Discord, yeah.
Yeah, and you were like, is that relevant? And I was like, I didn't even acknowledge it, because I wanted the weight of this book. I wanted you guys to both experience this book and feel the weight of Asajj Ventress dying, because it is a real important moment. However, unfortunately, it cheapens it a bit because Star Wars can't ever fucking kill anyone. Ever. So,
I mean, I cannot believe the Star Wars universe would do this and just make up somehow a character returns.
They've never done that before. But yeah, so
in what?
I can tell you both if you want. I'm happy to.
I need to know,
I know
the content now.
It's got to be Bad Batch, because
you would know if she was in season 7, Dave. Even with your
damn you, Burton! You're drawing me in, and I'd given up on Bad Batch because I watched the first season, didn't like it, and then you keep giving me these breadcrumbs.
There's 3 episodes of it which I can almost guarantee. No, there's 2 episodes which stick out in Bad Batch, and I think they'll be, Dave, if not your favorite, your top 5 best Star Wars episodes ever. Because there's one in particular that's so good, but I can't explain anything about it because it's very much a build-up episode. It's nearer the end. But I'll say with Ventress, if Ventress is in the first season, I wouldn't mention it, because when we eventually get to the Bad Batch, it's going to be a year project really. If we do one Bad Batch episode, if we do 4 episodes each month and record, so it's going to be realistically end of next year. And I'm certain that they've said that her story isn't finished. She does pop up in Bad Batch. It's not a massive thing, but she is in it. I don't want you guys thinking you're going into like one of the seasons of Bad Batch and Ventress is the main character. No, she's briefly in a bit, and I won't say in what context or when or why, but it's not season 1. But she does mention, she says something about she was resurrected, or it wasn't my time yet, or something like that. There's no other characters that interact with her that know that she died, really. So it's one of those, and then obviously the internet blew up. That's where the meme somehow Ventress returned came from. And then they since came out and said, look, we haven't retconned Dark Disciple. The ending of Dark Disciple is intentionally made in that way. We've got plans that her story, specifically after Dark Disciple, up to where we see her, we are going to explain. We are going to give you an answer, just not yet. So I don't know if they're doing another animated series. There's lots of rumours of that. I suspect, if it was me, I'd do a Tales of the Sith, and I would do one of them would be about Ventress, and the other one would be about Palpatine or someone like that.
Do you think, I don't know if this would be good or bad, that Disney would do a series on Ventress and maybe kind of cover what happened at the end of this?
I think she'll stay in animation.
Right.
I would like to see her in live action.
Because that's why I asked who would play her.
Yeah, because you said about Andor flashbacks, and I was like, if they do an Obi-Wan Kenobi series 2 and they bring Vos into it, because I think they're trying to work out what to do with Vos and Ventress, because I think you really have to have them interact in some way after this. But to what degree, you don't know. Again, when we see Ventress in Bad Batch, I'm not going to tell you much about her, but you don't really know. It's your point of view character doesn't really know who she is or anything. So you as the audience are like, oh my god, and the main character's like, I know her vaguely from the Clone Wars because people knew her name, but I don't know anything about her. I don't really trust her. That's it. There's not really much else to her. Without getting into major spoilers, I don't want to ruin her appearance, but I didn't want to tell you, and I'm glad you all avoided it. It would just be like when you finish Clone Wars, there'll be some stuff that we'll be able to talk about. But I was just thinking, if we were diving right into Bad Batch, I wouldn't bother. But it is going to be a while, and I have a sneaky suspicion that this year or next year, the thing with Ventress in is going to get announced, and then you're both going to be like, the fuck is that? Do you know what I mean? And so I know that a lot of listeners have already seen Bad Batch and things like that, so I just want to clarify, she does somehow Ventress returns, but I'm glad you had the emotional beats of not knowing that. Dave will forget anyway, but you have that Vos again. He got mentioned in Revenge of the Sith and Kenobi, but I want to lay the foundation for that. So we've been talking for a long old time. We've already done the plug, so it's going to be the final things you each want to say about Dark Disciple, and then we'll do a quick old ending of the call as I hit my microphone. So, Maff, you're going to go first. Go on.
Yes, there's a couple of things that I really liked in this. One, Megan might enjoy this bit. There's a bit when they're kind of talking about the bosses kind of changing code. He goes, yeah, it's a real shame when someone turns on you. And I'm thinking, okay, because he says that to Obi-Wan as well. And it's like, oh, shit, yeah, because you do that later on.
Yep.
And that. But the other thing is, now, maybe I read this wrong or listened to it wrong. The bit when they kind of go onto the ship when Boss is going to go kill Dooku again, and Anakin and Obi-Wan are they in droids? Or are they behind droids? Or
so I think
Roger.
Yeah, I liked the Roger joke that Obi-Wan and Anakin do. I think, because I was a bit unclear about this, I think they've hollowed out the shells of B2 battle droids, so super battle droids. The giant ones that have got their head is like this tiny little nub in the front of their chest. The big shoulder boys, those things. I think they hollowed one of those out and basically walked in those. But when I was first listening, I was like, oh, they've sent a remote one. And I was like, oh, they're sat at the ship, but they're like remote controlling one. And then I was like, and then Anakin and Obi-Wan are hiding in Dooku's office. And I'm like, wait, what? And I've read the book before, so.
Well, that's the thing that confused me there, because it's like, it did kind of feel like that kind of a cartoon where we're going to both kind of get stuck underneath the desk.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And then pop up at the last minute. I mean, again, Obi-Wan at times is like, no, just wait, let's see how this plays out. You're here to do a job. Go do your job, mate.
Yeah, just kill Dooku. Yeah, the ridiculous plot armor. Is there anything else you want to mention, Maff, or pass the baton?
I'll pass the baton. I think that was it, yeah.
Dave, any final words as we wrap up? We'll come back to Maff.
Final thoughts. Love the book. Absolutely loved it. It's not a perfect book, but that's okay. And all the peripheral anomalies with characters not quite behaving the way you want to, I just didn't care about any of it. It was a love story. It was a tragedy. Just happens to be with these characters that we kind of know, but are far enough out of the sphere that you can kind of play about with them, and there's real peril there, and real real ramifications, but like Star Wars, they can always reverse them if they want to as well. But yeah, I just absolutely loved it. Way more than I thought I was going to.
That's great. And before I come to you, Maff, just quick to the listeners, if anyone wants any recommended reading after Dark Disciple, if you liked that, I said it before, but Brotherhood is the perfect sort of start to the Clone Wars, and it introduces Asajj Ventress, and it's the first mission Anakin and Obi-Wan go on when Anakin is no longer his Padawan. He's a full Jedi Knight. And then the other book, which I recommend, is one of my favourite standalone Star Wars books. It's called Inquisitor: Rise of the Red Blade. And it is about a character who is a Jedi, and they're there in the Battle of Geonosis, so one part of the book, you get to see the Battle of Geonosis from a younger Jedi's perspective. It's really, really interesting. And her time in the Jedi Order, a lot of parallels to Anakin. And then, it's not a spoiler because it's in the title of the book and on the cover, she becomes an Inquisitor. And it's showing how someone went from being an air quotes good Jedi and how the Jedi, Mace Windu, failed her across her life, Mace Windu, and how things like that and the distrust she felt from that led her down a darker path. And then for the final third of the book, you get to see what it was like becoming an initiate in the Inquisitor's kind of ranks. And it very heavily connects to the Darth Vader 2017 comics as well, I will say. So I recommend that book hugely. If you like the dark side element of this, you like the intrigue, you like there's bits of the book that cross over with Clone Wars in Inquisitor: Rise of the Red Blade. It is very much a prequel novel. I really, really rate it. It's by Delilah S. Dawson. It's one of my favourite standalone novels, so I want to say that. And I love Dark Disciple. It's a great book. It's not in my top 5 Star Wars books, but it's definitely not in the bottom 5. It's a really solid, I think, 8 out of 10, especially as we've kind of touched upon as we're going through the Clone Wars. But Maff, what's the last thing you want to say?
The bit with Desh as well.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that completely.
We have Desh is kind of Voss's best mate to a certain degree, and there's again, Jedi mess up here again. You've just captured Voss and Dooku. You're taking them for trial because, that's what Obi-Wan, instead of executing them like they're meant to do. Right, we're here now. What we're going to do, Cody, tell you what, get 12 of your mates and just escort them. And we'll put these 2 little Jedis as well, which, Desh does sound like he's kind of done things. I don't know who the other
They're both unknowns. They're only in this book.
And it's like me and Anakin, 2 of the best fighters, are going to leave you to deal with this and go speak to the Jedi Council. Oh, look, they escaped. Who'd have seen that? But there's a fight there, and one of the things that Desh has is he has like a stinger.
Yes.
And they say that once he it comes out of his bones. I think he breaks his arm or something.
I think there's there's a thing in his. It's like
and it comes out, and it's basically, once it does that, like a bee, it kills the host, but also if it touches or scratches, then it'll kill the other person as well. In that final moment, Desh is like, this is it, I've got to take Boss down because he's killing everybody. And he makes this sacrifice, and Boss just like that turns him, and he ends up scratching the other Jedi, and they both end up dying. Again, Boss is kind of looking down, and is it pity or is it just a bloodlust? I'm not quite sure. Where he knows that Desh is going to be in pain for like 10 minutes or so, just slowly dying.
I think it was a mercy killing.
And it's a mercy kill, but again, it kind of comes back to the start, because that's one of the things in the start. One of the I can't remember what the speeches are, goes off to kind of fight. A character that we've had throughout the book, and that I suppose it's a case of, we've got to tie up loose ends, because, we've got to deal with this character. Otherwise, people are going to be questioning, well, where was he? Was he in Order 66, something like that? So they kind of kill him off. And again, it gives you that thing of, where is the Boss at this point? Is he good? Is he bad? Is it a mercy kill? Is it I'm just going to finish you off? I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I had to kind of mention him.
No, of course. I forgot about him. So good job, Maff. And well, that's it for us, friends. Thank you for tuning in. Next episode is going to be the first 4 episodes of Season 7 of The Clone Wars. which is the introduction of the Bad Batch, which we spoke about in this. We spoiled a little bit, but yeah, we're delving into season 7. Finally, 3 more episodes, and we're finished with the Clone Wars. And I think we're going to have a wrap-up episode, and then we'll finally get to Revenge of the Sith. But friends, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share, comment. Tell us what you thought about all this. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So until we speak to you next time, friends, may the Force be with you.
Always.